Hello, everyone. Welcome to the All Day Football Show. I'm your host, Jackson Kellogg, and today we'll be getting into my Week 2 NFL Power Rankings. So, Week 1 just wrapped up last night with the Titans beating the Broncos. So, I figured we'll do Week 2 of my Power Rankings this week. Hopefully, would like to also get Patriots Boston Tea Party Podcast Episode 6, as well as my picks for Week 2 this week. But we're going to go with the power rankings first. So getting right into it, the team I have in last place is the New York Jets. The Jets put up the most abysmal performance ever against the Bills. Darnold looked atrocious. Their offense couldn't get going. Le'Veon Bell got hurt and is now on injured reserve, and Adam Gase put him back in the game while he was injured, knowingly. And the defense was just straight garbage. There were no bright spots on this team at all. It was just a terrible performance. This is like when it was around this time last year and the Dolphins got killed by Baltimore. Granted, this wasn't as bad of a score as Baltimore-Miami for the Jets, but the play was around that same ballpark. Are the Jets rebuilding? Possibly. They are building up picks. I have a feeling a lot of these guys that are proven guys could end up being trade block or trade deadline players. But it was just an abysmal performance by the Jets. Absolutely, definitely belong here at the number 32 spot. Number 31, we have the Lions. The Lions were playing decent through 3 quarters. And then it happened. They let Mitch Trubisky, yep, you heard that right, Mitchell Trubisky of the Chicago Bears, second overall pick in 2017, taken ahead of Pat Mahomes and Deshaun Watson, led the Bears to a fourth quarter, 3-touchdown comeback against the Lions. Wow. And Matthew Stafford wasn't injured. Granted, rookie running back DeAndre Swift did blow the game by dropping one of the easiest catches of all time. So he kind of threw for the Lions there. But still, the Lions should have won that game. But they have over the last 2 years, they have not been able to play 4 quarters of football. That defense is trying to be a copycat of the Patriots, because that's what Matt Patricia's trying to do, and it's not working. Because in order to have a Bill Belichick defense, you need Bill Belichick. Who do they not have? Bill Belichick. So, as long as the Lions keep trying to think that they're going to be a Patriots 2.0, which they're going to think until they get rid of Matt Patricia, then they're going to belong down here towards the bottom of the power rankings, because it's not going to amount to anything. Matthew Stafford has tried to carry this team on his back for almost a decade. And his back, as seen last year, is starting to crack, figuratively and literally. The Lions are going to have to figure out themselves here very quickly if Matt Patricia wants to keep his job, because he has one of the hottest seats in the NFL right now. At number 30, the Carolina Panthers. Their performance against the Raiders wasn't terrible. That's why they technically moved up a spot, but they did lose. They do have some bright spots to look forward to. That offense does look better than I thought it would. I still don't understand why they didn't give it to Christian McCaffrey on a 4th and 1. But that's a rookie coaching mistake. Matt Rule will grow. The Panthers' defense looked a little shaky. Well, I say a little. They gave up, 34 points against the Raiders. Josh Jacobs got 3 touchdowns and ran all over that team, and then they kept getting beat over the top, whether it was Ruggs or Nelson Aguilar on that beautiful touchdown catch. I bet Eagles fans right now are crying over that, but we'll get to the Eagles in a second because that's going to be fun. But Panthers, they lost, but for them, they got to look on the brighter side. That it wasn't a horrible performance. They just couldn't come away with the win. At number 29, we have the New York Giants. Again, their performance wasn't terrible. I mean, for the fact that the Steelers have this all-star defense and they were still able to put up 16 points against it is decent, especially because I thought that the Giants were going to get killed coming into this one. Darius Slayton had himself a game. Daniel Jones couldn't really be efficient. He had less than 300 yards, threw only a single touchdown, and had 2 interceptions, so he's got to work on that a bit. The defense wasn't able to hold Roethlisberger back as he just kept throwing it to all of his different receivers. He did look better than I thought he would coming off his elbow surgery, so I got to give him a little credit for that where it's due. So he'll get better. The Steelers will get better. I still don't think the Steelers are a playoff team, but we'll get to more on that. Right now, the Giants are just looking to try and get some wins here. For Dave Gettleman's sake, if the Giants don't have a decent year this year, he's fired after this year because he's wasting top talent in players like Saquon Barkley. You got guys like Evan Engram, Dexter Lawrence, just so many different players that are going to get wasted while they're in their primes on that team. So it's a shame to see. At number 28, we have the Miami Dolphins. The Dolphins, for how much the Patriots had talk over the offseason about how their offense wasn't going to be very good, the Dolphins didn't really have a way to stop the Patriots' offense at all. That defense got ran over so badly. They allowed over 150 yards rushing between Cam Newton, who had 75 yards on his own, and then a mixture between the Patriots committee of running backs, whether it was Michelle, Burkhead, White, or even J.J. Taylor, an undrafted rookie free agent. They just tore up that Dolphins defense running the ball. And then the offense wasn't much better as Ryan Fitzpatrick threw 3 interceptions. The only bright spot you can look at right now for the Dolphins on that defense was Jerome Baker had 2 nice plays. That Cam Newton second touchdown where he dove over the pylon, that should have been ruled down on the 1-yard line. He did step out. I'll be honest about that. But they got to give credit to Jerome Baker for making that play, as well as Jerome Baker, making the play where N'Keal Harry tried to reach out to get the touchdown with his arm, and Baker knocked it out of his hand and it fumbled into the end zone for a touchback. So he made 2 great plays. One didn't quite go his way due to poor refereeing, but Dolphins didn't look great. I wouldn't be surprised if we see Tua Tagovailoa coming in a couple weeks. At number 27, we have the Cincinnati Bengals. They should have had that win. Or they should have at least gone to overtime. So I saw the play happen live. So Randy Bullock lines up for the kick. There's something within 30 yards of the kick. I think it was a 31-yard field goal. And he goes, so the play before, Joe Burrow throws a nice ball to A.J. Green into the front corner of the end zone, except A.J. Green pushed off to get the catch. So it was offensive pass interference, ruled no touchdown. So they go for the field goal, right? And so Randy Bullock, the Bengals kicker, he lines up, goes to kick it, and he shanks it far right as, I think it was his hamstring, just pulled right out from underneath him he was limping off the field afterward. It was brutal, but he shanked it far right, and the Chargers won. It's a shame that Joey Burrow couldn't get a win in his first career start. He didn't play horrible. He did make some mental errors on his plays. Was a little turnover prone. Definitely has to work on that a bit. This isn't the SEC. As good of defense as there are in college football, there's a huge jump between college football and the pros, and Joe Burrow tried to play like he was still in college. So he'll have to work on that if the Bengals want to have a chance this year. But Joe Burrow couldn't do much, as all he was doing was scrambling around because that O-line is atrocious. So they're going to have to look to get better on that O-line. The wide receivers look great, though. This is definitely going to be a scary offense if they can solidify the offensive line. The Indianapolis Colts. Who said that the Colts weren't going to be good this year? I know a lot of people who didn't, but one person who did was me. Since the Colts signed Phillip Rivers and everyone's talking about, Colts are a Super Bowl contender, they're going to be competing with the Chiefs and Pat Mahomes and as well as Lamar Jackson and the Ravens. Did you guys see who they just lost to? Because I'm pretty sure that Phillip Rivers just threw more interceptions than touchdowns to the Jacksonville Jaguars and lost. I also believe that a Colts defense that was supposed to be super good this year gave up 30 points to a Jaguars offense that doesn't have a running back. That I forget his name. They picked him up this week. I forgot what his name was. Like, they didn't even use Raquel Armstead or Chris Thompson. They used some other guy. Chark had a decent game. Laviska Shenault had a decent game. Gardner Minshew had an awesome game. And the Colts sucked. The Colts are not a Super Bowl contender. They are not a playoff contender because they thought that they could get better play out of Phillip Rivers than they would have Jacoby Brissett. In my opinion, if I was the Colts general manager, I would have stuck with Jacoby Brissett for the year. But that's none of my business. Colts lost. They're going to have a very rough year this year when they figure out that Phillip Rivers is not the answer at quarterback. Now, the team that did beat the Colts, the team to move up one of the most spots in my power rankings, as I had them dead last before the season started, the Jacksonville Jaguars, who have gotten rid of Leonard Fournette. They've gotten rid of Yannick Ngakoue. And their quarterback is Gardner Minshew. Who would have ever expected this team to be competitive? I certainly didn't. So, although I was right with the Colts sucking this year, are the Jaguars going to be competitive the whole year? Possibly. Definitely watching as all the media personnel who said that the Jaguars were going to go winless are still getting paid their weekly paychecks for being wrong. But the Jaguars are going to be competitive, I guess. Maybe not against some of the better teams. Like, don't know who they play this year exactly, but even if they play like a decent team, like if they play like the Raiders or the Broncos or a team like that, they're still going to get their butts whooped. The Colts are just one of those teams, like, again, I said, they're not going to be a good team this year. So the Jaguars got a good win. It was a close one still, but a win's a win for them because Minshew had an interview about a week ago, and someone asked them if they were tanking, and Minshew said it perfectly. He goes, myself and the coaching staff and the front office, he goes, if we suck this year, we don't have jobs at this time next year. And he was absolutely correct about that. If Minshew doesn't play well this year, he doesn't have a job next year. So he's going to try and ball out this year to prove that he is the franchise quarterback for the Jaguars. So that should be a very good sign for the Jaguars fans. This is a good statement win for them to prove that they are not tanking and that they believe in what they're doing on that team despite all the very crazy moves that they have made. Next up, we have the Washington football team. I can't wait to get to the Eagles part about this, so I'll keep the Washington part short and sweet. They had a great performance against the Eagles. They were down 17-0 at one point, came back. They had a great pass rush. They played decent enough on defense to get the Eagles' offense to be slow. They held the receivers to minimal points. They got to cover better on the tight ends, as Goddard got over 100 receiving yards as the tight end too. And Haskins didn't look bad. The fact that Haskins is getting points with a receiving core that includes Terry McLaurin as the wide receiver 1, and I think Steven Sims was the wide receiver 2. Like there's a couple no-name wide receivers there that I'm like, who in the world is that? That were getting on the stat sheet for the football team. So good performance by Washington, another team that had to make a statement that they're going to be competitive this year, and they're not just going to be going for losses. At number 23, we have the LA Chargers. The LA Chargers, they got the win against the Bengals, but it was because of Randy Bullock pulling his hamstring while trying to kick a 31-yard field goal. But that's besides the point. The Chargers, so one stat that really was brought to my attention was that Austin Eckler, they got rid of Melvin Gordon in the offseason. They let him walk. They didn't pay him. So Melvin Gordon goes to the Broncos, so that leaves Austin Eckler as the lead back for the Chargers. And the big thing with Eckler was that he was a receiving running back. He could run but also catch. So if Austin Eckler is one of the main parts of your offense and he's a pass-catching back, why does he only have one reception? He should not have one reception. That's unacceptable. Keenan Allen played great. Mike Williams played decent while injured. But that is unacceptable. Eckler needs to be worked into that offense better if they're going to be able to exceed down the line. The Chargers' defense was decent. They played well. Part of it was the fact that the Bengals have no offensive line, and Joe Burrow he's a rookie. He's going to make those rookie mistakes. He's going to be turnover prone. So I don't think the Chargers are going to be ultra competitive this year. They're not going to be competing for a playoff spot. They're going to be seeing what they have, and it's just going to be developing Justin Herbert and waiting to see the time where Tyrod Taylor messes up and they throw Herbert in. At number 22, we have the Chicago Bears. I wanted to move Chicago up, but I didn't really see the place to move them up to because they somehow won that game against the Lions. Mitch Trubisky, as I said, came back, scored 3 touchdowns in the fourth quarter. But that shouldn't have happened. That was more luck than it was skill. The Lions just played so abysmal. You can't even give the Lions credit for it. Or the Bears credit for it. Because the Lions, they didn't really do much. They just played bad. So for the Bears, yes, they got the win. But I'm really going to look to see if they can keep that up down the line. At number 21, we have the Atlanta Falcons. So the Falcons that defense got trashed by Russell Wilson. Absolutely trashed by Russell Wilson. So that doesn't bode well for that defense. The offense played great. Matt Ryan balled out. He had 3 different receivers with over 100 yards between Julio Jones, Calvin Ridley, and Russell Gage, all with over 100 yards, with Julio having 150. So, great offensive performance. I don't exactly know what Gurley's stats were, but I don't think they really had time to run the ball because Russell Wilson just chucked the ball everywhere. And the Seahawks went from a heavy run team last year to just chucking the ball everywhere, and it was great. It worked so well for them. This was the perfect team to practice it on too, because the Falcons were good enough offensively so that they couldn't just walk away with a win by killing them and stopping the Falcons on defense. But the Falcons' defense was perfect for them to practice it on, as the Falcons have a younger secondary, and it was just a great performance by Russell Wilson. It'll be a fun game to watch when New England goes into Seattle, and we're going to see Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf, and Russell Wilson battling Stephon Gilmore and the rest of that Patriots secondary. That is going to be the matchup to watch this week. Between that and Houston at Baltimore, those two games are going to be the best games to watch this week, hands down. Like, mark your calendars for those games, especially Seahawks, Patriots. But the Falcons, they've got a lot to be excited about. Not necessarily on the defensive side. The offense, Matt Ryan's still balling out. They have no reason. I mean, if you remember back, Matt Ryan and Joe Flacco were taken in the same draft. So Joe Flacco is playing backup for the Jets right now, and was kicked out of Baltimore. What is that, 2 years ago now? I believe 2 years ago. So, I mean, the fact that Matt Ryan's still playing well over a decade later, that's good to see. They don't have to worry about getting a quarterback for the future just yet. So, decent performance by the Falcons. Could have been a lot better. The Cleveland Browns. It's painful. It's painful. I had the Browns to be great this year. So many people want the Browns to do good, finally. But they can't get out of their own way. Baker Mayfield threw an interception on the first drive against Baltimore, and they did not recover as they got steamrolled, with the Ravens scoring over 30 points and only scoring 6 of their own. So they did stop the run against the Ravens, but it didn't help that Lamar Jackson just threw the ball everywhere else, and the secondary couldn't stop him. So, not a good look for the Browns. This offense was supposed to be so much better, except that the fact that Odell Beckham only had 3 receptions for 22 yards, and he's a top 10 receiver in the NFL. I mean, what are you doing? David Njoku just went on IR, so they just lost an injury there. Like, the Browns got to figure it out, especially Baker Mayfield, because he needs to stop doing these commercials and worry more about football. So, until then, the Browns have a lot to worry about. Another team that I had a little bit more higher hopes for, until angry Aaron Rodgers walked into their palace and I obliterated them. I mean, absolutely obliterated the Vikings. Over 40 points scored on that young defense. That they could not stop Aaron Rodgers on defense, no matter what they did. Did not matter. Aaron Rodgers threw the ball all over him. Couldn't stop it. Offense got off to a rough start. Got a little better down the line. Doesn't help that the only person Kirk Cousins could throw to was Adam Thielen. Adam Thielen had over 100 yards receiving, but no one else was even close. Olabisi Johnson was up there, but why isn't Justin Jefferson getting more snaps? Why aren't you working him in? I mean, decisions like that are going to cost the Vikings. Mike Zimmer I believe he just got a contract extension too. They brought Kirk Cousins back on a 2-year extension. I mean, you can't even say that they have all the pieces there, because they obviously don't. That secondary needs work, and they need to figure out that offense, because if they're not going to use Dalvin Cook and Alexander Mattison the whole time, then they need to teach Kirk Cousins how to throw to all of his receivers, because what they're doing right now will not work. The team I was most looking forward to in the 18th slot. 18th. The first team to lose to the first ever team called the football team. The Philadelphia Eagles. So, you want to talk about it, Eagles? Because I don't think you do. This was an abysmal I have no words. The Eagles should have destroyed a football team. Absolutely killed them. But, so you can say, they can make the complaints that our offensive line was injured, we don't have any players. Enough of that. The Eagles have made the injury excuse for many years. Many years. The last couple. It's always injuries have derailed their season. If injuries are part of your problem, then you're doing something wrong as a football team. The fact that you can't keep your players healthy. At this point, the injuries are not an excuse anymore. Get better depth if you have injury issues. Carson Wentz needs to stop throwing interceptions. Granted, I think the Eagles gave up like 9 sacks. I mean, they were playing with a rookie right guard and a unknown right tackle who I believe played Australian rugby. Like, there was their third string right tackle. But I mean, you can't give up that many sacks. I mean, you're trying to compete with the Cowboys in this division. This was the perfect week, as the Cowboys, they lost to the Rams this week. So, anytime you get the chance to get a win over, or to get an early lead in the standings over your division rival, one of the craziest rivalries in football right now, as they both generally get around the 9-7 mark, whether it's a little higher or a little lower, and they're competing for the top of that division. They needed this win desperately, and they could not get it. So, figure it out, Eagles, or else you're not going to make the playoffs, which I don't have you making the playoffs right now anyway, and I didn't even before this game, but this just further solidified my point. At the 17th spot, I have the Denver Broncos. They lost a close one to the Titans. I thought that it wouldn't be that close of a game, especially with Von Miller out for. Actually, the report said that he wants to come back before the season ends. So originally it was he was out for the season. We'll see how that goes. But right now the Broncos have a decent team. Drew Lock, he wasn't like a superstar, but he didn't play terrible. He didn't turn the ball over. He was consistent. What killed the Broncos in the end was the fact that Vic Fangio didn't use any of his timeouts on the Titans' last drive. As soon as the Titans got in field goal range, he should have started using those timeouts, and he didn't. So that was not a smart move on the coaching wise. If he keeps making those coaching decisions, John Elway should make a decision very quickly and soon, because he doesn't. I mean, you look at what teams with quarterbacks are doing young quarterbacks are doing right now. I mean, you've got Sam Darnold, who's going to be projected as a bust right now because of how he's playing with the Jets. Baker Mayfield, same thing. Josh Allen's playing decent. Where's Josh Rosen been? You want to be able to keep these young quarterbacks with the chance to develop consistently with the same coaching staff. And if you're going to end up firing Fangio down the line because he makes poor coaching decisions anyway, you might as well do it sooner or later. So, other than that, the Broncos played okay. They're going to be battling for one of those wild card spots, as they're not going to be competitive enough to beat the Chiefs for the division.